My name's Chuck Swanson. I'm the executive director of Hancher Auditorium at the University of Iowa. And I brought, thank you. And I brought my dear friend, Michael Hill, with me, and I'm going to introduce him in just a little while. So first of all, I want to say thanks to Jerry and to Bill and to Ann and to the staff for bringing us all together on this important topic. So it's great that we're following Rona, because this is just perfect. She's a good segue into what we're going to talk about. Michael and I are going to talk about how Hancher promotes our diversity initiatives through faculty connections. And some of you have been there, but we have the most beautiful brand new performing arts center in the country. It's a rebuilt one, and I'm so proud of it. But more important than anything, I want to make that place as inclusive as we possibly can. And over the years, our staff has become more diverse, but I'll just be honest, it's hard as a white, middle-aged male to be able to promote diversity, even though it's in your heart, without making connections across the university, and connections with people who you can work closely with, and people more than anything that you can be honest with. Because even for myself at times, you know, what is the right language? What are some of the right things to say? I struggle with that. So in 2011, Hancher was very fortunate and so lucky to be able to connect with Michael and Lena Hill from the University of Iowa. We put together a residency called Iowa, an Invisible Man, Making Blackness Visible. This was a week-long residency that included 14 departments across campus. And we used this as an opportunity to explore the African American experience at the University of Iowa at the time of Ellison's book. And I've talked about this before, but this all came about from an initiative that we put together at Hancher called the Creative Campus Initiative. We invited faculty from across campus for 3 days to learn how to integrate the performing arts into the classroom. And we were fortunate enough, again I'll say, to Lena Hill, Michael's wife, was one of the participants. At that time, she was an assistant faculty member in African American Studies and English. And Lena had done her scholarly work on the visual elements of Ellison's book, Invisible Man. So about a month after the Institute, Lena got a call from a producer and director in New York, Chris McElron, and he wanted to bring, for the first time ever, Ralph Ellison's book, Invisible Man, to the stage. It was going to happen at the Court Theater in Chicago. And so Lena had just attended our Institute. And first of all, she was just so excited that somebody really wanted to take a look at her scholarly work. Well, she thought about the Institute, thought about Hancher. She called, and then that summer, Michael and Lena and I put together the most amazing, incredible residency that in my 31 years at Hancher, I feel that we've ever done. And it was one of the cheapest residencies too, to be honest, in terms of financial dollars. But I feel that a lot of residencies, and most residencies that we do, are a point in time, but I feel that this residency has a timeless feel to it. So it always boils down to people. I mean, that's, you know, in anything you're in, but especially the performing arts, and especially when you're dealing with diversity and inclusion. And so I'm very proud, so proud, to introduce my good friend, Michael Hill. Michael Hill's an associate professor in English and African American Studies. Michael has published 3 books, and the most recent title, and this goes back to the timeless feel of this residency, is Invisible Hawkeyes, African Americans at the University of Iowa During the Long Civil Rights Movement. Michael serves on committees across campus, and he is president of the African American Council at the University of Iowa. And I feel like at times, you know, we just use Michael and Lena all the time. And at this point now, Lena is assistant to the president of the University of Iowa. So driving over this morning, I told Michael, I've never felt so good about all the players at the University of Iowa. And I do have copies of the book for the MUPS directors. I want to give them to you tonight. But I just want to brag just for a minute. Is that okay, Michael? He might talk about this, Fields of Opportunity. I know he's going to. We did it was a residency activity, the first one ever in our Strauss rehearsal hall at the new Hancher. And Michael and Lena put this all together with Hancher's support, of course. But at that time was the time that this book that they had edited was going to be for sale for the first time. And Lena, in front of this, the crowd that was there, announced that the book was named after me in my honor. And I just have never felt anything like that ever before, ever. And one other person who I'll let Michael talk about, but that to me there again showed that, I want it to happen, but we can't do it alone. So Michael, thank you.
So you've been kind enough to invite me into the inner sanctum, a space that I'm probably going to be unceremoniously ejected from after I finish these remarks, but that wouldn't be unusual. I'm generally invited places once, and after I speak, they say, "Oh, never again." So I do want to say a word or two about fields of opportunity, particularly dovetailing with what we've heard earlier, both from students but also on the conference call that's just been completed. The first thing I would like to say is don't be afraid to disaggregate in your engagement with diversity. Quite often we want to balkanize and place multiple disadvantaged populations side by side and suggest that there is no difference between the challenges and the hurdles that are being faced. We want to be very efficient, and our desire and drive for efficiency leads us to place everyone on an equal plane and leads us to sometimes desire a programming that is undifferentiated in key ways. When you think about something like fields of opportunity, the central research question that led me to be interested in the project had to do with a fundamental moment that we're dealing with in this country, and that is what's going on with the Black Collegiate. What do we confront when we look at a Black Collegiate? What is the personality? What is the prospect? But also, what is the identity of the Black Collegiate? When you think about that in the 21st century, we have some cheat sheets, we have some thoughts, we have some ideas, we have a robust and a sophisticated literature that is connected to it. But when you begin to insert the notion of the Black Collegiate into a continuum, an expanse that reaches all the way back to the latter portions of the 19th century, well, now we're dealing with something that's altogether different. But what was fascinating to me is that quite often the relationship between the 19th century concept of the Black Collegiate and the contemporary notion of the Black Collegiate had been decoupled. Researchers weren't contemplating them simultaneously. Transgenerational conversations were not taking place about what it meant to be a Black collegian in the early portions of the history of this country and what it means to be a Black collegian now. So when I turned on my TV and I heard people talking about Black Lives Matter, when I turned on my TV and I heard students at the University of Missouri expressing their umbrage with regard to the way that things were going down, it struck me, something that my grandmother said to me once before. There is nothing new under the sun. These are not situations that are erupting that have never been dealt with before. And in fact, quiet as it's kept, perhaps it's been more intense in an earlier moment. Maybe it has been more graphic. Maybe there's been more to be upset about at an earlier moment. So when I began to think about what we can do, how we can address that, how we can engage, I remember my good friend Chuck Swanson over at Hancher, and the unique space that a new performance hall provided to stage conversations and a series of events connected to trying to address some of these questions. What can we do when we confront the dilemma, the conundrum of the Black collegian? How are we going to handle the presence of individuals who we have invited onto our campuses and then sometimes treat with tolerant indifference? So that's the gestation of fields of opportunity. That's the philosophical overlay. But as all of you know, being in this business, it often comes down to the guts, right? This is a bottom line type of business. You got to try to figure out where you're going to position things, where you're going to place things. How are you going to put all of this together? So what I want to talk about for a brief moment is how Fields of Opportunity moves from a twinkling in my academic eye to an instantiation of a week-long set of programs that we were able to do at Hancher. And as Chuck has alluded to, the beginning of it is you've got to know someone. You've got to know someone. And it's very good if that person owns the keys to the space that you're trying to enter. The stage is not just the space where things happen, but it's also the billboard wherein the branding of a university can take place. So what did it mean in the world of the University of Iowa that a program like Fields of Opportunity takes place not at the local community center that seats 25 people, not at a church that in the basement could hold 125 folks, but that in the same year that Hancher rises like a phoenix to reclaim its place on the university landscape, that we hold that program amongst the earliest programs that are held at Hancher. Chuck's a modest type of person. He wasn't going to mention that. He wasn't going to bring those kinds of details into play, but I'm a little more opportunistic. So the first thing I wanted you to think about is, where do you place your commitment at the level of billing? Where do you place your commitment at the level of billing? When you think about where these kinds of programs are going to take place, does it take place on a Saturday at like 12 midnight between 12 and 2 when nobody else is over there and the police are dropping by to try to figure out what's going on, right? Are your performance centers committed to it as a frontline framework? And that's one of the things I want you to understand about Fields of Opportunity. Chuck, as he was bringing the group Steph Africa to town, said to me in a very intentional and deliberate way, hey, what can we do in order to integrate Step Africa and the performance that they are about to produce into the world of what it is that you're trying to do from a curricular standpoint, from a student affairs standpoint, and also from a broad morale shaping event. And those are three things that I do want you to keep in mind. Curricular, right? Student affairs, and morale shaping. These are elements when you contemplate the function of your performing arts center that you want to keep in mind. Curricular, because the academic function of your university is going to dictate the extent to which faculty are willing to be partners with you. They will join you to the extent that they feel that their pedagogical mission is somehow undergirded by what it is that you're trying to do. They can't feel like an afterthought. Right, let me give you a concrete sense of this. Sometimes people come to me, local performing arts centers, they'll be like, in 2 days we'll have an artist. Can you bring everybody in your class over to the Performing Arts Center in 2 days? By the way, you don't feel like a real partner in that event. You feel like you're being exploited. You suspect, if you're from Georgia like me, that somebody is, engaging in some chicanery. That they're seeking to get the optics right. Because I know what you're saying is, can you bring like 15, 20 black people over to my performing arts venue so that we can get the optics together? You can't do that, right? It's got to be connected, as has been suggested in earlier conversations, to an ongoing curricular commitment. So part of what Chuck allows you to do is to suggest for yourself what your curricular agenda is going to be. So in the earliest portions of the conversation, instead of trying to tell me what it is that he needed and what it is that was going to go on, he was very much willing to allow us to construct a set of curricular objectives and to allow us to guide and direct him so that we could be good partners, so that we can be good collaborators in meeting those things. The second facet of it in terms of what I discussed is this notion of student affairs. Do not view other units on your campus as hostile agents. I want to pause there because sometimes the programming that goes on in performing arts dynamic is seen as immediately in competition with what's going on in student affairs units. Right? On our campus, we have something called a campus advisory board, and quite often they're bringing performers through, and they're younger and they're hipper performers, and sometimes their hair is longer and their cell phones are bigger, and the way that they engage with things is different. I'm just being real. I mean, I don't know y'all don't know me. You know, like I said, you may never invite me back. That's fine, right? I got other things to do with my time, so you know, it's great. I enjoy myself, but I'm just being real because often that then produces a sense of competition that everyone feels but that no one acknowledges. So when you go to the campus advisory board, they feel like, well, you got Yo-Yo Ma over there, leave me alone, right? And the campus advisory board is bringing in Kendrick Lamar, and the students are like, hey, with all due respect, Professor Hill, I'm going to see Kendrick. I don't care if God is showing up over at Hancher, right? So from the outset, we recognized in a strategic way that we needed to build some bridges with the Student Affairs Committee. So instead of trying to ad hoc that, we just made them a part of the organizing framework. And one way that we incorporated them in is to suggest that a bit of that perspective that I was providing to you might be useful. Coping strategies that were utilized by black students at the University of Iowa from 1930 to 1960 are not outdated. They are, in fact, the essence of the same playbook that students in the 21st century will use in order to be successful. They have already walked the path that current students are seeking to walk. Notwithstanding the fact that Twitter didn't exist, notwithstanding the fact that Facebook was but a twinkle in the eye of many people, the way that they engaged the university is the same way that contemporary students need to engage the university in order to move from being aspirants of an undergraduate degree, from being aspirants of a graduate degree, to being recipients of said credentials. And we could tell the student service people that that is what we wanted to expose current students to. Kendrick is smooth. His rhymes and social commentary are trendy and hip. But at the end of the day, Kendrick can't give you a degree. This is very simple, right? So I want you to come hear some people who can get you closer to that degree that you so crave. And if you're having problems with this, if you're having difficulty, call your mama. Call your mama and ask her who she wants you to go listen to. The last facet of it has to do with the notion of morale. This quaint idea. But people don't understand that part of the challenge that we face in the 21st century is a challenge of morale. Underrepresented minorities on our campuses, on the kinds of campuses that all of you represent, on the kind of campus that I live on right now, it's a morale dilemma. Motivational speaking may have seemed to go out of style with Zeke Ziegler, you know, like it seemed like, you know, like, oh, some of you, so, but, you know, I was a Toastmaster when I was growing up, and, you know, like, so you have to be able to deal with that issue of the emotional climate that people find themselves in. And we dispense with that. You know, we move too rapidly beyond that. We say, well, your attitude toward the enterprise should be sealed by the fact that you desire and hope for, you've got these aspirations and you understand how they get operationalized by having the degree. Ain't that enough? No. In the same way that stadiums throughout these massive public institutions pull 90,000, 100,000 fans to shout as the representatives of their colors are running back and forth on a football field. Sometimes you understand morale. Sometimes it becomes very clear. People understand morale very clearly when the maize and blue run out of the tunnel onto the football field. When Harbaugh shows up and is a resurrecting savior of many of the dreams of people surrounding the athletic department at the University of Iowa, they understand morale very well then. Why is it that morale somehow gets dispensed with when we start talking about individuals who are spending their lives in the library and trying to figure out how to move from class to class with some degree of inspiration. So these are some of the things that Chuck was able to help us with as we dealt with fields of opportunity over at the University of Iowa. And I don't want to overtax my time. I do that a lot. You know, that's the other reason people don't invite me back. They say, he would never shut up. He just talks on and on and on. So what I want to leave by saying is this. Hancher as a performing arts center, as the sister alluded to it earlier, has a reverential function within the space of Iowa City. Hancher galvanizes and makes clear for many individuals, especially underrepresented minorities who are showing up in Iowa City, possibilities that that area holds that they would not otherwise be aware of. When Wynton Marsalis shows up to blow his horn, when Savion Glover shows up to do his dance, when Queen Latifah shows up to sing her songs, Hancher serves as a beacon that people can see from many, many miles away. And they'll recall years later, I was there. I was among the throng. I attended. I experienced that which I could only receive in that space. And I attribute not only to the Performing Arts Center itself, but also to the university as a whole, a revered position, because it gave me things that nobody else could give to me. So what I want to suggest to you by way of motivation, if I can't give you anything else, as you go forward, continue to be those kinds of beacons. Don't flag in the energy and the enthusiasm that you bring to the work that you do, because there are some people who would never get it anywhere else, who are becoming better people, who are discovering better selves, who are constructing a better society. And it's all because of the work that you do. Thank you.